Yes. Hello and good day. Today is Thursday, the 21st of October, and we are still in the middle of our study of the ancient Greeks. Today, we are going to talk about the history of the ancient Greek cities as it is uh, centered around the conflict between the Greek city states, who, once again, there may have been 1,000 of them spread out across Greece, versus the empire of the Persians, one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. As it says there, classical Greek history begins with their victory over the invading forces of the Persians. Now, Tuesday, if you saw there, I gave you some film clips and some descriptions of the famous battle of Thermopylae, and that battle, whatever parts of it are real, whatever parts of it are exaggerated, are an incredible example of the human spirit and its willingness to stand up. 300 Spartans versus, even by the most conservative estimates, there were several 100,000 Persians. And remember, they weren't fighting with guns, they're fighting with swords and spears and shields. And for 3 days, the Spartans kept the hundreds of thousands of Persians at bay. But as you know, they eventually were overcome by the Persians, thanks Estialtes, which Estialtes, by the way, is a word that today in Greek means nightmare. So our next conflict occurs when the Persians have vanquished the Spartans, the 300 Spartans anyway, and are invading into Greece. But there's a critical battle at a city and the city is called Marathon. Now, today, Marathon means either a diminishing number of gasoline stations. There's still a few. But most people know Marathon as a race of 26 miles, 300 yards, a figure that I would remember. 26 miles, 300 yards. The reason why that race is such an odd length is because at the Battle of Marathon, a primarily Athenian force defeated the Persian army, and after the battle, they wanted to allow the Athenians to know that the battle was won. They sent a runner to take the message, according to the legend. And you got to remember, they didn't have roads, they didn't have running shoes. It was rocky, craggy. He was just running through the brush, and it was 26 miles, 26 miles or so. Even today, when people run that race, all you hear about today is the world record holders and things of that nature. But even today, running the marathon is actually a rather dangerous activity. It is not uncommon in those events for people to die of heat stroke. There comes a point in the race at about 21, 22 miles, which runners call hitting the wall, meaning that your body has expended, and these are well-conditioned athletes, your body has expended all energy that it has in it, and the body starts consuming itself, eating its own muscle. There are instances of people losing control of their bowels. I'm not lying, on themselves. They lose consciousness as they try to run. In fact, there's a famous scene where I think it was a Japanese runner in the early marathons, comes staggering in to the stadium where the finish line is, and he's staggering around and literally falls just a few yards short. Another instance where some Italians saw their guy running in and he was weakening, and they jumped out of the stands and ran and picked him up and tried to carry him over the line. Of course, they were disqualified. Fact of the matter is, if any of you run cross country, know anything about cross country, that if you touch a runner in the middle of a race, that runner is disqualified. But anyway, so the messenger from the Battle of Marathon runs and runs 26 miles, and according to the legend, gets to the very city of Athens and drops over dead after he delivers the message. To which, of course, the person he told said, "What did he say?" That's a joke. No, yeah. And so round 3 of this war between the Persians and the Spartans was at a place called Salamis. And Salamis is a narrow strait in between, the mainland Greece and the Peloponnesus. It's a very narrow strait, has a very narrow channel for ships, and Xerxes had amassed this tremendously large fleet. Once again, another overwhelming number of Persians versus the Athenians. In fact, Xerxes was so confident that he was going to win that he had his throne placed on the island of Salamis overlooking the channel so he could watch. Well, the Athenians, very, very clever, very good at naval strategy, they lured them into that narrow channel where, once again, their numbers would count for nothing. And at the critical moment, they lit on fire a bunch of the Athenian ships, older ones, and then they had a few sailors remain on board and sail them into the mass, this tremendously large number of Persian ships. And the Persian ships are trying to avoid the burning ships, and they start running into each other, and suddenly arrows rain down from the shoreline, and it's just a catastrophe. And Xerxes didn't get to see the victory that he'd counted on that day. He, in fact, had to pack up and run really fast. In order to preserve that victory. I'm sorry, not preserve victory, preserve his life. Had the Athenians captured him, that might not have been good. Okay, and so that was it. That was the last of the conflict between the Persians and the Athenians, Persians and the Greeks. The Greeks, particularly of the Athenians, interpreted their victory over the Persians as a sign from the gods that they were the most advanced peoples on earth, and in many ways they were right, particularly in that idea that the Athenians were thinkers. The Athenians, for all of their superstitions about the gods, also tried to reason things out scientifically as to why things occurred as they occurred. And as it says there, this will give way to a golden age of Athens, and to a lesser extent in all of Greece. For example, here's when you see the great golden age of Greek theater, Greek architecture with the columns, that we've already talked about. Rick Steve talked about Greek theater, plays who were tragedies and comedies. I mean, most of our theatrical and film traditions have deep origins with the ancient Greeks. And in fact, once again, many of the plot lines that you see in Greek, or rather, plot lines you see in modern films, modern television shows, originate with the Greeks. Greek architecture with the columns, Greek sculpture, and of course, Greek philosophy. Okay. We are going to begin here tomorrow. Hopefully you scripted that film. Short lecture today, and we'll continue tomorrow. Can't wait until we're all here together so we can lecture the whole period. And so I'm going to go now. Bye.